Well, good morning, everybody. I got up a little early this morning because I thought I was going to do a little bit of landscape photography over at my favorite place, the barn. But it's overcast out, so I'm at my walking area early. So I thought I'd get on here and just do a real quick video and give you an update on the parents. Okay, those of you that are on the channel that follow me, you know what I've been dealing with the parents. And if you want to go check that out at the end of this video, there'll be an icon you can click on, probably right over here on this side of me. There's a whole playlist of videos of what I've been dealing with my 87-year-old parents. Yesterday, well, let me back up a couple days. Last week, they're 1 week from closing on their condo, and it's a very delicate situation right now with the buyer, and she's having a little bit of trouble getting insurance, which I'm sure the bank was requiring that on her home. And I'm not too sure where that's all at right now, but so far as we know, we are going to be closing on the condo a week from today, which is actually going to be July 25th. And I've been kind of monitoring my parents over the last couple weeks, watching what they do. They've been over there at the property where they're going to put the mobile home, and they've been doing things kind of, I don't know, just keep them busy, I reckon. I don't know. But I realized that they really weren't doing some of the important things. So a couple weeks ago, let me back up. A couple weeks ago, I said to my mother, I said, we need to start getting a hold of, you need to start contacting the people you do business with, your pharmacy and your insurances and Social Security and all that stuff, and start putting in address changes. Let's don't depend on the post office to do an address change for you, because we know how things are at the post office these days. And I've been through that story with her before. So I left her alone with that. I figured, well, she'd get started. She did not, okay? In fact, she almost forgot that I said anything to her when I mentioned it. Anyways, I talked to my wife about this, and my wife helped me out with a list, okay? So last week, I went over to see them. This has been about 2 weeks before they had to move, okay? And I started talking to them about some of the important things. And I think in one of my previous videos, I kind of mentioned about futzing around, okay, or just goofing off, or whatever you want to call it, that they've been doing. I said, folks, we've got to get down serious business here. I said, we've got to take care of some of this stuff. So, you know, she didn't do it. And yesterday morning, I called her. I can't remember exactly why I called her. And anyways, they've been packing some boxes here and there. They've got somebody going to move the furniture for them into a storage facility they have rented. And I said to her on the phone, I said, Mom, do you want me to come over there and help you with some of this stuff? And she said, well, I didn't want to bother you if you're busy. I said, I'm not busy. I said, call me when you get home. She was going somewhere, and I said, I'll come over. So I went over yesterday afternoon, and I made a list of all the things I could think of that we had to call. Her pharmacy, they get prescriptions in the mail, her supplemental insurance, you know, all her health care stuff. And I knew about some of her other bills that she had. But when I got over there, this is the funny part. They started pulling stuff out of their wallet, okay? Credit cards that I didn't know they had, and a Lowe's card, and you know, some other card, you know. And I said, well, golly, guys, let's just go through your wallets and start pulling stuff out and looking at it, because we need to call all these places. So when I got done with all this, I spent about 4 hours over there calling on the phone to get address changes put in to these places. And every single time I called, I would have to put one of them on the phone to verify it was okay for me, their son, to talk to this company. Anyways, it was a long afternoon, okay? And I realized then that they are not going to be able to accomplish this move and the setting up of this mobile home and all that stuff by themselves. They're probably going to need my guidance, okay? I've tried to give them their independence and allow them to function at their own level, but it's not working out, okay? They have a hard time organizing anything, okay, at their age. And I guess it's just part of being 87 years old and having some cognitive reasoning issues. So I'm slowly realizing that they need more help, and that's what I'm up against right now. Like I said, we got 1 week to the closing. There's a lot of logistics involved in that, because really we don't want to move out of the condo until we actually close on it and they actually get the money in their hand, and then move out, okay? The buyer wants to take possession as quickly as she can, which is understandable, but with the circumstances that are going on, we can't just go ahead and move and assume that the closing is going to happen, okay? There have been times that I've heard about, it didn't happen with me, but there have been times when people made it all the way to the closing table and didn't close on the property, okay? And that could be a problem. I think that's a problem with anybody selling. It used to be a long time ago, I remember this, when you closed on a piece of property, you sold a house, I think, if I remember rightly, you had, 30 days to get out of the property. It's not like that anymore, okay? People want immediate possession, and it's kind of hard to do. You don't want to move out of your place and get to all the utilities switched off and all that if all of a sudden the closing doesn't happen, and you got to stay where you're at. You got to reverse everything you did. So that's kind of a problem right now. Anyways, I wanted to give you a quick update. The mobile home is not scheduled to arrive on the property for at least another 3 weeks. They have rented an apartment somewhere, a furnished apartment, for a month. I told them it's probably going to be 2 months. My stepdad agrees with me, because we start looking at things that they got to do, like building a deck on the trailer, so my mom can get in and out of it, because she's really, really bad at walking, okay, with her hip and everything. She can't hardly climb any steps or anything. So, yeah, it's going to be a couple months they're going to be in a rental. But I just want to give you a quick update on the parents and let you know that what's going on. And, maybe some of this advice or information will help you if you're dealing with your parents. Just remember, you need to find out as much as you can about their life, okay? It's just like yesterday we were talking about a life insurance policy that my mom has. They're going to use that. It's a small policy. It's only $5,000. They're going to use that to pay for their cremations. And they've been to the funeral home, and they've talked to the guy. They've got a sheet and everything to work with and all that, but they never finalized the plans. This is twice that my mother has been to the funeral home. She went once with my wife, and then her and my stepdad went together. And he says to me yesterday, I said, we need to change the address on the life insurance policy. Is that in the lockbox at the bank? Yeah, I need to get that out, he said. I said, why? He says, well, I need to take it down to the funeral home. I said, you haven't done that yet? I said, I thought you already done that. I said, when you do that, I need copies of what you're doing, so if something happens to you, I know which funeral home we're going to, okay? So, as they get older, you need to get more involved. If you're the caregiver, you need to get more involved in their personal life. And you can do that in such a way that they hang on to their dignity and let them make some of the decisions for themselves and what have you, so they don't feel like you're just taking over. But you need to write down things. Like for my mother and for him also, I have started putting in my phone their health information. We go back over the years and talk about how many times my mom's been in the hospital for different operations on her hip and her knees and everything else. And then when we do visit the hospital emergency room, we have to answer all these questions all over again. So having them in my phone is helpful. So anyways, you need to get more involved in their life. And like I said, I know you don't want to get in their personal life, but that's what it is. Anyways, I wanted to give you an update. You got any comments, any questions, leave them in the comments of the video. I really appreciate y'all. And, I'm going to get out here and go to walking. It's still kind of cloudy out, if you can see out the window, okay? We'll talk to y'all later. Bye-bye.